still thinking about belief, and particularly the understanding of belief as related to seeing. I've spoken about it before in relation to submission, which I think is the etymological origins of the word. But I think one of the primary ways in which we understand believing conceptually, which isn't to say consciously, but conceptually, is through kind of metaphorical mapping, which understands believing in terms of seeing. One of the things I find intriguing about that, I was talking about it on the end of one of my previous videos, and a bit over time, so I had to cut it off, is this reference that I came across in the Bible, actually, which I'm not holding up as a reference source, but it was just something I found interesting. And I think it's in Daniel, and it's something that Jesus says. He says something like, what does he say? It says something like, the wise man knows that believing is not seeing. It kind of reverses that understanding that believing in the unseen and the unseeable is a kind of more respected, more, well, in terms of that text, a more realistic activity, a more worthwhile activity than believing in the evidence of one's eyes. Or at least, actually he doesn't say don't believe in what you see, he just says believe in what you don't see. Now I have some problems with that, particularly in relation to the kind of text and the kind of culture that supports that text. But I do find it interesting. I'm trying to think in what way can I understand that? Is there a way of making that idea useful for me? And I think there's a couple of things that spring to mind, and they're not metaphysical at all, really. They're just my first approaches towards what an understanding of that might look like. And the first is to do with, I guess, what you might call the grounds for belief and the grounds for seeing. When I look out along the salt line here, this is the salt line, which is the old distributed railway line near Sandbach where I live. When I look out along here and I see the gate at the end of this path, I'm looking at the gate and I'm believing in what I see. I believe the gate. I believe it represents itself kind of paradigmatically in my consciousness, in my own consciousness mind, as a believable object. But I kind of know that gate has a number of number of existences, if you like, which are out with the range of my senses. I know that gate is composed of molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, fields of energy and force, all those kinds of things, which I cannot see right now. But would it make any sense for me to say I don't believe in the existence of those things? It's the existence of those things which allow the gate, as a visible object, to appear to my consciousness at all. So I kind of have to believe in the unseen in order to have the seen emerge as an object of belief in my vision in this case. It also exists, I guess, in a kind of historical sense. It's made of wood, so there's a kind of trajectory for those atoms and molecules and subatomic particles coming out of the ground, going through a period of historical development when there were trees, going through various processes of felling and going through sawmills and being processed, and then being parts of lumber yards, and then being parts of assembly processes and transportation and processes and installation processes. And so the gate, I don't see any of that. That's completely invisible to me. But I kind of have to believe in something like that. Otherwise, the gate would not be there where I'm looking at it. So I have to believe in the unseen in order to be able to see the gate at all. There are probably other activities going on with that gate. The fact that it is supported on hinges in a certain orientation to the ground, and it carries out certain activities when you pull on it, and you take the lock off and you pull on it, it will swing open and swing closed. Those activities are dependent upon the kind of physics of the planet and the universe that we're in right now. And I can't see that physics, and I can't feel, well, I can feel that physics in myself, but I can't see that physics, and I can't, it's not part of my my visual understanding at all of that gate, but I have to believe in it, and that belief is completely tacit, completely implicit. And also on a more prosaic level, that gate is part of what Polanyi calls my focal awareness. I can see it, but I know that focal awareness is a construction of all kinds of other kinds of visual processes, not least of which, and this is something else that Polanyi talks about, is that it's the product of the activities of my right eye and my left eye working together to give it a kind of placement within a field of depth, as well as just a kind of flat object. And each of those eyes is seeing something slightly different, and that's what Polanyi refers to as subsidiary awareness. I am aware of I'm non-consciously aware, but nevertheless there is a non-conscious representation somehow of what my left eye is seeing, and that's different to what my right eye is seeing. And it's the combination of those subsidiary awarenesses which are producing the focal awareness of this gate. And there's no point in me saying, well, I don't believe in those images. I don't believe that my left eye is seeing something that I can't have conscious access to. And I don't believe that there's something my right eye is seeing that I don't have direct conscious access to. There's no point in me saying that, because the very fact that I have focal awareness of the gate demonstrates that these subsidiary awareness structures are functioning. And so I have to believe in them. So I think there are grounds for, this isn't what Jesus was talking about, I'm sure, I guess I'm just using that as a lead-in. But believing is seeing, but implicit within that, I think, is a belief in the unseen. Actually, there's something going on right now in my thinking to do with Derrida. And I'm not a big Derrida scholar really, so I don't know much about him. But I know Zizek talks about Derrida, and talks about him in terms of the negation, when we put UN in front of a sentence. And Derrida gives the example of the undead. Being undead. No, actually it's Zizek, actually. Being undead is not the same as being alive. It doesn't simply reverse the polarity of the idea you're looking at. It does something else with it. It defines when you say something is undead, it defines the nature of that object in relation to being dead, but not by simply reversing it into being alive. It postulates a different kind of definition for what death is, and puts it in a different ontology. So I'm just thinking the same thing about seen. The seen and the unseen. In a sense, you kind of have to believe in the concept of the unseen in order to get a fully fledged conception of the seen. So I think in terms of believing, I guess in terms of a kind of conceptual understanding of what believing is, and how that maps onto a believing is seeing metaphor, part of that must be to do with the unseen, that believing relies upon the unseen. Maybe you don't have to believe in the unseen the way that Jesus said, but I think there's a kind of dependency between believing and the concept of the unseen, and of the concepts of the various subsidiary and productive processes of seeing that I mentioned before. You all right, guy? I don't.